And namaste. Can you all hear me? Can you give me a little response in the chat window? Are you able to hear me? Just say yes in the chat window, please. Okay, do you know how to type something in the chat window? I just put a question in the chat window. Can you please reply to the question? Where are you joining from? Which part of the world are you joining from? Okay. So Ankur, are you the host now or what? Speak to me.
Yes, I'm in as a participant. Let me see if I can turn on the chat. No, I'm not a host, so I cannot enable the chat. Can you make me a co-host?
Yeah, I just made you a
Yeah.
co-host.
So now let me enable the chat. Yeah. So we can hear.
Okay. All right. Okay, the chat is supposed to be enabled now. Can someone say hello in the chat? Let's see if that's working now. Sorry about that, everybody. Are they getting my chats? Ankur?
Yeah, I can see the chat. You sent that to hosts and panelists, not to the whole audience, though.
Oh,
So it's still not. No, I can't enable the chat for everyone from my phone. Maybe if you can go to. Why can't I as a host? So there's three dots next to it on the chat window. Then you can click and say, yeah, so that went to everyone. But you have to allow everyone to also respond.
where do we do that?
That's also in the chat window under attendees.
Okay.
And then you have to let the attendees.
Hello. Okay, great. Chat is working now. My God. All right, great. So people are joining from Chicago, Philadelphia. Okay. One from Philadelphia. One family. Okay, she's got it here. Orlando. From India, Minnesota. Okay, Houston. All right, good. Okay, very good, everybody. So we finally got that working. Sorry about that. I want to first of all extend a warm welcome to all of you on a Friday evening, right? You could be in many different places, but you're here with us. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. I am going to just share a few slides on this upcoming course called the Orientation to Hindu Studies course. Okay. Let me share my screen. And Okay, so are you all able to see my screen? Just give me a response in the chat window. Are you able to see my screen? Yes. Okay, wonderful. Great. Terrific. Okay. So first of all, this is an introduction to a course called the Orientation to Hindu Studies course that's coming up in the middle of April. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But let me ask you, how many of you have not yet taken the course? Say yes, I haven't taken. You haven't yet taken the course. Just type something in the chat window. I just want to find out you haven't taken the course. Okay, very good. Great. Excellent. All right. Excellent. So we are going to talk a little bit about Hindu studies in general and this particular course called the Orientation to Hindu Studies. By the way, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kalyan Viswanathan. I'm the president of Hindu University of America, and I have been the president of this university for just about 6 years now. Okay, and we are building slowly this university that we hope one day will be a very significant, respectable, accredited, and impactful institution. Why do we need Hindu studies? This is the first question I'm going to start with today. Why do we need Hindu studies? After all, we have our cultural traditions, our music, art, our food, cultural practices, rituals, performative traditions. We have our scriptural texts, texts like the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Sutras, so many, many, many texts, right? Ramayana, the Mahabharata, etc. We also have our spiritual practices for those of us who are somewhat familiar with some of these practices. And we also have academic narratives, right? So, given all that, do we really need Hindu studies? No, what's the point? Can we not do without Hindu studies in an academic setting? We haven't really had any academic Hindu studies, it's quite some time now, a couple of centuries now. Why do we need Hindu studies? Somebody give me an answer, okay? Type an answer. Why do we need Hindu? You can also say we don't need it at all. What's the point? It's just a waste of time. Okay, to find the negative propaganda on social media with good facts. Okay, good. To know the truth, all right? That's somebody else. Give me something. Why do we need Hindu studies? Overwhelmingly misrepresented. Yeah, that's true. That's actually true. Okay. Any other reason? To connect all the pieces together. Yeah, to make our future generations better informed about who we are. Keep our culture alive. Yeah. Know about our culture and how it can help in the future. To teach, to connect with the way of life, connect ourselves with a way of life. Okay, all right, good. That's a good opening set of propositions. Okay, to teach us who are non-Indian how to practice and live. Okay, there's somebody who's a non-Indian here. That's great. Excellent. Welcome to Hinduism. All right, great. So we have a good set of responses to this question. Okay, and I'm going to hopefully answer this question a little more systematically today. Okay. Now, if you go back to ancient times, and when I say ancient times into the Hindu world, what I mean by that is times before the British colonization of India, and perhaps even before the Islamic invasions of India. If you go back to a time, the age of classical Hinduism, right? It was uncontaminated, unaffected, unimpacted by both the vast period of Islamic invasion and British colonization. The human journey would have been depicted in Hinduism in these following terms. Okay, human journey, human aspiration. And this is not just for Hindus, this is universal. It is a Hindu view, but it is universally applicable. Okay, and I'm going to develop this for you. So this is encapsulated by the term Purushartha. Purushartha. This is a Sanskrit word, and it consists of 4 distinct categories of human aspirations and endeavors. What are they? Well, most of us know it. It is Kama, Artha, Dharma, and Moksha. And human life was conceptualized as a journey, as a process of evolution and maturation. We all, as all human beings, we evolved through these set of aspirations and endeavors. So what are these? Well, Kama. Let's begin there. Kama means everything to do with our survival, the pursuit of happiness, of pleasures, of joy, of enjoyments, sensual and otherwise, the pursuit of immediate gratification. And if you look at this as a Purushartha, in the Hindu conception, it was not illegitimate to pursue these things. Not at all. Okay, in fact, one of the possibilities of being a human being, is the possibility of joy and happiness and pleasure and enjoyment and gratification and so on. And this is a legitimate human aspiration. And if you look around you, you'll find that this is what most human beings engage in. Okay? This is what we live for enjoyment, for happiness. And of course, there's the negative side of it, which is to avoid suffering, to avoid pain and misery, depression and anxiety, and suffering of any kind, right? So that's the other way. The other side of the coin is all of that. But then that's only one part of what is possible. The next important dimension of human aspirations is the pursuit of security. Our aspiration for our own security, comfort, to secure our future well-being, stability in life, financial stability, savings, investments, relationships, wealth. Stock market is taking a beating today. And everybody's wealth in America is diminished by a little bit, about 5% today. Okay. But all of us pursue artha, regardless of whether we are, Hindu or Muslim or Christian or American or Russian or Japanese or Indian, it doesn't matter. The pursuit of karma and artha are common to all of humanity. But what distinguishes Hinduism is that it calls forth 2 more Purusharthas. The Dharma. And in fact, Hinduism is called, another name for Hinduism is Sanatana Dharma. The Dharma is the most important word in Hinduism. There's a good reason why it's not called Sanatana Yoga, for example, or Sanatana Moksha, or Sanatana Jnana, or Sanatana Bhakti, and so on. It's called Sanatana Dharma. And Dharma is the pursuit of the well-being of others, the well-being of society, the pursuit of law and order, justice, social harmony, the performance of our duties, the fulfillment of our obligations towards others, to ensure the security of the environment, the security of future generations. All of that falls within the domain of dharma. It is a vast domain, right? And then finally, you have the pursuit of moksha, which is freedom, freedom from the condition of being bound to human existence, the achievement, the attainment of fullness and total contentment, the cessation of sorrow and rebirth, and our ultimate return to the source, to live in bliss in relationship with the source. That's called moksha. Okay, it's also called nirvana, it's called kaivalya, it's called different things in different traditions like Jainism and Buddhism and so on. But broadly, you get the idea. This then is Purushartha. These four dimensions of human aspirations and endeavors is called Purushartha. What this does is it integrates the personal, the material, the social, and the spiritual together in a sort of a ladder, a hierarchical ladder of aspiration and endeavors. And what this does is it creates this hierarchy of aspirations and endeavors at the level of the individual human being, but it also brings into being, into our lives, a balance between the individual personal, the material and the social, and the spiritual and the cosmic. Okay, and this is Purushartha. And if you had, if you go back 1,000 years, maybe 1,200 years in time, all of us as Hindus, and even anybody who went through a proper Hindu education would have learned this as part of their very early education, primary school education. And this would be developed through secondary education and so on, through the Gurukula, through the ashramas. And we would live in conscious knowledge and understanding of this, this journey of human existence as one that begins as a child. We only know karma. The little child, the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, it only knows immediate gratification. Then it attains to a concern for its own well-being in the future, the pursuit of security and future well-being and stability and so on. Then, of course, if we are properly educated, we would develop naturally an aspiration for the well-being of others, of society itself. And we would expand out from being purely self-interested, selfishly constructed, selfishly interested, to being interested in the larger well-being of society as a whole. And that includes all of the concerns around climate change and environment and law and order and stability, polarization, conflict, peace. Everything is contained within the realm of dharma. And of course, moksha is the pursuit of the sannyasin, the one who renounces all of that and moves in the direction of final release from samsara. Okay, so this is the idea of a Hindu journey through time in our individual lives. We move up through this ladder of hierarchy, this hierarchy of aspirations, endeavors, and pursuits in life. But that's 1,200 years ago. What about today? Well, the modern journey of every Hindu begins differently. Okay, it begins with complete ignorance because we don't have the benefit of a proper education. In Hinduism, in early childhood, we don't have the benefit of that anymore. If you're lucky, you pick up a few family traditions. And very soon that ignorance is filled up with misconceptions, misinformation, a lot of the narratives that you all spoke about that render Hinduism completely inaccessible. It is something unrecognizable. You can't even know your own tradition because there's so much misconceptions about it floating around. And somewhere from here, we develop some curiosity at some point in time. And from curiosity, we attain to some knowledge. Today, you can get knowledge from ChatGPT or Wikipedia. But to find an authentic source of knowledge, in some sort of committed way of learning, to pursue within a sampradaya, a tradition. A few of us who are lucky attain to that. And then from that, we develop a new aspiration, a modern aspiration called engagement. How do we engage with the world as a Hindu? And we acquire a sense of responsibility for impacting the world around us in a positive way, in a dharmic way, from the standpoint of dharma. And ultimately, a few of us, if we are lucky, we ascend to the possibility of providing genuine leadership in the world today, from a Hindu perspective, from a Hindu paradigm, the Hindu background. Okay, this is a journey of a modern Hindu. Some of us get stuck in ignorance and misconceptions, and they never advance. They live their whole lives completely consumed by ignorance and a whole host of misconceptions. Never develop a curiosity, therefore, never develop even some knowledge. Some of us move beyond and we attain to some knowledge, but we don't get ever committed to learning in a more complete and formal way. And some of us, very few of us, ascend further into engagement, responsibility, and leadership. And even those who do have a lot of gaps in their knowledge. This is the modern contemporary Hindu condition. Okay. And at the lower levels, where there's predominantly ignorance and misconceptions, well, what are they characterized by? Well, first and foremost is the pressure to be secular and modern. Secular and modern, which means what? Which means to see religion as obsolete and anti-modern. Religion as an obsolete phenomena, and Hinduism as a religion that is anti-modern and therefore obsolete and irrelevant. That is the condition of being ignorant and being filled with misconceptions. And one of the characteristics of this condition is that there is no access to learning about Hinduism. There is no curiosity, there is no interest, there is no opening, there is no window of opportunity. One lives one's entire life in ignorance, more or less, with a lot of misconceptions. And of course, one part of this condition, one aspect of this condition is to implicitly trust and believe in what is taught in our schools, colleges, textbooks, mainstream media, and so on, from where we pick up so many misconceptions that it leaves us with embarrassment about our own traditions, with shame about our traditions, and perhaps a little anger at why there is so much misinformation floating around. We live in the age of misinformation. Whether you like it or not, today we live in the age of easily available misinformation and lies and untruths floating around, masquerading as the truth. Sadly. Okay. If we advance from here and we develop some curiosity and attain to some knowledge, what happens is mostly it is self-initiated learning. We learn through family traditions, most of us. We learn a little bit about Hinduism. We learn through temples, rituals, practices. We learn to perform practices without understanding their contexts. We can't answer questions about Hinduism very well. If we are lucky, we associate with a tradition or a sampradaya. We find a guru, a teacher. We go to an ashram. We join a community like an Art of Living community or a Sadguru community or an Amachi community or a Vedanta society, or an ISKCON community. or a Swaminarayan community, and so on. And that association with the tradition or a sampradaya within Hinduism. Sampradaya means tradition, a well-constructed tradition with a deep lineage of teaching and practice. The lucky few Hindus, a small percentage, maybe 10%, do end up associating with the sampradaya. And they are very lucky because all of a sudden they have an opening, a window, a door opens, a curtain gets pulled, and there is the emergence of knowledge. But even through that emergence of knowledge, even through that deep association with the tradition or sampradaya, there is the persistence of many, many misconceptions. At the next stage of commitment and engagement, what happens is we get to a place of deep association with Hindu traditions, sampradayas, ashrams, gurus, acharyas, rishis, munis, yogis, and so on. And Hinduism transforms in front of our eyes. And one of the consequences of that deep association with Hindu traditions, cultures, sampradayas, and so on, and concepts above all, is a desire, a new desire to serve and contribute, serve humanity and contribute to the world. That is a fruit of this association. And it may be characterized by a lot of time spent in study and learning in association with a teacher within a particular tradition. And definitely a very deep knowledge, but there continue to be lots of gaps. And we don't even know that there are gaps. It's like a blind spot, lots of blind spots. And of course, finally, when you move into the realm of responsibility and leadership, it is characterized by in-depth study, not just within the sampradaya, but across all of them, or many of them. Breadth of knowledge. Knowledge of philosophy, history, sociology, anthropology, psychology, spirituality, so many different ways of knowing and understanding. In-depth knowledge of rival religions and traditions. What are their ideologies? What are their paradigms? What are their axioms? And when I say rival, I'm using the rival in the sense of religion itself as a competitive domain. Hinduism allowed for a plurality of traditions to coexist. Christianity changed that. It turned religion, the space of religion, into a competitive landscape. And of course, Islam came along and made it even more competitive. Right? So therefore, we are forced into a competitive landscape now. And in-depth knowledge of rival religions and traditions is very important in today's modern world. It may not have been that important 1,200 years ago, 1,500 years ago, when the other religions were not as powerful as they are today. But today it's inescapable to be a productive, responsible Hindu. This knowledge of other traditions is required at a most basic level. And at this level, we develop as a Hindu the ability to represent the Dharma in the public square and defend it. And we naturally get interested in teaching, writing, engaging with the modern media. We participate in debates and dialogues, in advocacy, policy, in institution building, and so on. So we're able to provide leadership not just for our own community, our own current generation, but we engage in activities that impacts many generations to come. That is real leadership. We are able to take responsibility for the transmission of Dharma across the generations. And ultimately, that is the only thing that counts. This Dharma is Sanatana because it has successfully transmitted itself across the generations. And when the transmission stops, we're done. There will be no more Hinduism in the world. Therefore, as we grow through our own lives, as we mature and evolve, at some point, it should become a conscious priority for us, that we take responsibility for the transmission of this dharma for future generations. And that leads us to engage in, to protect, to preserve, to promote, propagate, prepare ourselves, prepare future generations, provide solutions for this world from a Hindu standpoint. Okay, so I'm characterizing this as a modern journey of every Hindu, whether you like it or not. The only thing is, the only choice you have is to be stuck somewhere in this journey. You can be stuck in ignorance with a lot of misconceptions, with some partial knowledge, or you could attain to a measure of commitment and engagement, and ultimately to responsibility and leadership. And many of our gurus and acharyas are living here at the level of leadership. Okay, they provide leadership. Take somebody like Sri Ravi Shankar or Amachi or Sadhguru or Swami Vivekananda, who's no more, or Ramana Maharishi, or any of those people. They provided leadership for the Hindu community for millions and millions of people. And that comes through this journey. One doesn't attain to that so easily. So Hindu University of America exists today to accelerate this journey for Hindus. For non-Hindus, it exists to give them a sense of how to engage with the principles, the concepts, the practices of Sanatana Dharma. So if I ask you a question, who are you? Who are you as a human being? And this is not as a Hindu, I'm talking about in general, as a human being, who are you? Well, who is a human being? Well, let's ask it in more general terms. What is a human being? Who is a human being? A human being is certainly a collection of atoms and molecules. Is that a correct answer? Somebody tell me. Is that a correct answer? If I say a human being is it's a collection of atoms and molecules, would I be right? Is that true? Somebody tell me. Is that the truth? Yeah. It's not partially true. It's fully true, right? It is. It is the modern. If you look at a human being from the standpoint of modern physics and biology and chemistry and so on, yeah, a human being is a collection of atoms and molecules. Now, if you say, well, a human being is an aggregate of flesh and blood and bones, would I be right? Is that right? Is that true? Somebody tell me, is that true? It is, right? It is true. Suppose I say a human being is a bundle of hopes and dreams. Would that be true? Yeah, that's also true. A human being is a field of possibility, a possibility of possibilities, endless possibility in terms of aspiration, in terms of accomplishment, in terms of experience. You see, all of these are simultaneously true. See, in order for atoms and molecules to be true, the other aspects of a human being, the other ways of defining a human being, don't have to be false. You understand? They don't have to be false. For one view to be true, the other doesn't have to be false. See, this is one of the fundamental recognitions of Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma. Many levels of truth coexist simultaneously. And how we access the truth is unique to us as a human being, because it's a function of our preparation, our prior preparation, our readiness, our psychological and spiritual readiness. to learn, to accept, to understand, to comprehend, to assimilate. Each human being has a certain readiness at any given time, and that's a product of their karma. And Hinduism answers to all people at different stages of development, maturation, evolution, growth, states of readiness. You see, that multiplicity of perspectives in Hinduism is sometimes bewildering, is bewildering. Why? Because simplistic traditions divide the world into truth and false, true and false. Like the Democrats have their own truth, and the Republicans have their own truth. And one community thinks the other is just the devil. In America today, that's where we've come to. The other party is terrible. It's the source of all misfortune in this country. And so does the other party. They think the other one is the problem. You see, this kind of extreme polarization arises from the inability to hold multiple truths, multiple perspectives, a multiplicity of perspectives, hold them together simultaneously. And this is one of the great attributes of Sanatana Dharma, and it's one of the great contributions of Hinduism to the world. Okay, there's something Hindus can teach the world. It is how to handle, how to find balance when there is an apparent multiplicity of perspectives, each one opposed to the other. Do you understand what I'm saying? How to work with many perspectives simultaneously. This is foundationally Hindu. Okay? And it can be of tremendous value in the contemporary world, which apparently doesn't seem to fundamentally understand this, or they don't want to understand it because it's all about winning. Who's winning? Who's losing? However, Hindus can contribute this to the world only if we also understand this dharma thoroughly and foundationally. See, different paradigms provide different methods and approaches towards the study of Hinduism. I'm going to distinguish two for you right now. If you look at the past, present, and future, this gives you the historical paradigm. The historical paradigm. And if you look at the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, you get the philosophical or the spiritual paradigm. It's philosophy and spirituality we're using interchangeably here. Not quite the same from a Western standpoint, but it gives us a way of accessing a paradigm which is fundamentally ahistorical. Ahistorical. Meaning this paradigm is valid for all time. Okay? For all time. And you can approach Hindu studies from different paradigms with different methods. And it produces different results, completely different understandings. Okay, I'm giving you only two paradigms here. Okay, we will develop a lot more paradigms in the course, in the orientation to Hindu studies course. Now, I'm going to take you very rapidly through a few slides. You're not going to get it all right now, but we'll develop it much more deeply in the orientation to Hindu studies course itself. So I'm going to give you like a taste of the course right now in the next few slides. See, the modern world is constituted pretty much by what we might call Enlightenment era thinking. Enlightenment era thinking. Enlightenment is a period in European history where there was a lot of tremendous advancement in the sciences, particularly, science, technology, the Industrial Revolution, a lot of things happened during that time. And one of the things that happened was the birth of the social sciences. And a key figure in this era, the Enlightenment era, is Auguste Comte, who is a Frenchman. Okay, he's a French scholar. And one of the propositions he made was, he said, he constituted in the year 1822 something called the law of the three stages of society. The law of the three stages of society. What does this mean? Well, he said every society advances, evolves, moves through three stages. They go through what's called the theological stage, when people believe in the supernatural. They are organized around belief. They engage with the divine and the mystical. So he called this the theological stage of evolution of societies. But then they move from the theological to the next phase, which is the metaphysical. You can call this the philosophical in the Western sense, where humanity advances from engaging with the divine and the mystical to the development of logical, rational, speculative thought, the development of reason. Okay. This reason versus belief was a major drama in European history that played out during the Enlightenment era. And then Auguste Comte said, beyond the metaphysical, there's another stage into which the society, human societies, evolve, and that's called the positivist. That's what he called it. What does the positivist stage of society mean? Well, it means now humanity only believes in what it can see empirically, what it can measure. It develops a historical consciousness and is scientifically bound. And this positivist phase of social development is what led to the tremendous advancements in science and technology and industry and innovation. And you can draw a straight line to what happened in Enlightenment era Europe to contemporary societies around the world. Okay, and this was the law of the three stages of society that Auguste Comte formulated. Okay, and this was formulated in honor of a celebration of the scientific temper. Science had superseded philosophy, metaphysics, which had already superseded theology and religion. This movement in time, historical time, Auguste Comte called the law of the three stages of society. And he said all societies, whether Europe, African, Asian, Indian, American, Japanese, doesn't matter, all societies mature and evolve through these three stages of society. Okay, and this law became the basis, the foundation for a whole science called sociology. So Auguste Comte is called the father of sociology. Okay, he gave rise to the birth of the social sciences and the humanities and the liberal arts and so on. And this is a tremendous development in European history. Today, I would be inclined to add a fourth stage. Okay, a fourth stage called the relativist stage, where now it doesn't matter what even science doesn't matter, even facts don't matter. We have entered a post-factual world, where alternate facts are the norm, propaganda and power is the end, and politics is the means, right? So this is a further development that has happened in today's postmodern. If you call this the modern world, this is the postmodern world. And this development has happened today, and we are living in this postmodern relativist world today. Okay. I'm bringing this up because this paradigm of the three stages of society is at the heart of the contemporary method of studying Hinduism. Okay. And the method, no matter what approach we take, it presumes that Hinduism is a religion and it belongs to the theological realm, and because it is already obsolete, it must be studied as a relic of the past. You understand what I'm saying? Hinduism, the only way to study Hinduism is something that is obsolete, that has long been superseded, is no longer relevant, is no longer, has any value in the contemporary world. And this is the sense and sentiment that is infused into the curriculum of the modern school. And I say middle school, high school, college, in university, it doesn't matter. This is a paradigm in which Hindu studies, the study of Hinduism, is trapped. And I'm going to give you a name for that paradigm. That paradigm is called the paradigm of progressivism, human progress, progressivism. Okay. Now, Auguste Comte celebrated science. His work, the whole of his life's work was centered around the celebration of science, the emergence of science, and therefore technology and industry and innovation, all of that, as a matter of human progress, of humanity advancing through these stages when they were primitive and believed in religion. And then they progressed to philosophy, became rational. But then they further progressed to science and everything that came from science. You see, this was his whole life. This was his law, his life's work. Now, a little inquiry, okay? What is the paradigm of science? Well, science is characterized by certain ideas, certain principles, certain characteristics. Science makes, and these characteristics are observability. The phenomena must be observable, measurable, quantifiable, meaning it must be available to human senses. It must be consistently measurable. It must be testable. It must be coherent. It must be precise, mathematically precise. It must predict future phenomena. It must be falsifiable. It must be efficacious. These are all the characteristics of science. It's called, taken together, it is a paradigm of science. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, okay? But I've got a question here. Why is Auguste Comte's proposition a law? Why is it a law? Why do we believe it's a law? He propounded a law like Newton. Isaac Newton propounded the law of gravity, and Albert Einstein propounded the law of relativity. Auguste Comte propounded the law of the three stages of society. But why is it a law? Well, is it a scientific law or theory? Why is it scientific? Is it a projection of European experience? Is it true for all societies across all of time? What is the Hindu perspective on this law, Auguste Comte's law? Okay, we will explore these questions in the Orientation to Hindu Studies course. But let me show you something. If you take the law of the three stages of society and apply the principles of science, the characteristics of science to this law, which are all of these characteristics, you will find that the law of the three stages of society fails every one of these tests. It fails every test. And we'll develop very deeply why it fails these tests. And why that makes this law completely unscientific. Voila, we have a contradiction. A law that celebrates science as a natural human evolutionary development, that celebrates science, is itself a completely unscientific proposition. Okay, how is it possible? Only as a contradiction, right? And what is the Hindu view about this law? What do we think about it? If you think about this law from a Hindu standpoint, what would you make of it? Okay, I'm not going to answer this question. We will develop it much deeper in the Orientation to Hindu Studies course. And I just want to do this just to give you a taste of the course, okay? Are these phenomena real, for example? Are they scientifically real? Are they measurable? These phenomena, well, what are they? consciousness, mind, knowledge, ignorance, desire, curiosity, love, compassion, courage, empathy, sensitivity, kindness, aspiration, confidence, clarity, ambition, fear, anxiety, depression, jealousy, greed, arrogance, frustration, anger, peace, regret. Okay, do they exist in reality? Can you measure any of these? If you can't measure them scientifically through an instrument, how do you know? How do you know? How do we know that they exist? What makes them real? Are they real, really? Okay, we will explore this as yet another standpoint, a vantage point, an angle of approach into the study of Hinduism. Our angle of approach, Hindu studies, we can approach it from many different standpoints: philosophy, theology, sociology, religion, geopolitics, anthropology, psychology, archaeology, philology. All these approaches are valid. Okay. So the Hindu world admits to many, many approaches. The coexistence, the simultaneous presence, coexistence of many aspects of truth, many perspectives without any contradiction, you see? And we'll get into some of these dimensions in the orientation to Hindu studies course. In fact, we'll ask ourselves, what is our orientation in engaging with Hindu studies? What is our which angle are we taking? Angle of approach are we taking? Well, why you should engage with Hindu studies is because, while if all you want is a basic knowledge, some access to worship and practice, and some spiritual advancement, or even personal transformation, family traditions, temples and rituals, ashrams and gurus would be adequate. Would be adequate. You don't need Hindu studies. Okay? At least you don't need academic Hindu studies. But if you want to participate meaningfully in the contemporary world, if you want to offer something of value, if you want to contribute and be of service, whether through therapy and counseling, believe it or not, the modern world, the contemporary world, needs therapy and counseling at a very deep and fundamental level today, because mental health, depression and anxiety and addictions are rampant all over the world. And of course, the pharmaceutical industry's solutions, they're also rampant because that's where the money is, you see. Therapy and counseling, teaching and research, writing and articulation and publication, engagement with the media, modern media, and the public square, in interfaith environments, in advocacy and policy, with contemporary politics, with debates and dialogues, the representation of Hinduism in the contemporary world, defending Hindu concepts and ideas, contesting misconceptions, conflict resolution, and taking ownership for the narrative. If you're interested in all of this, I'm afraid just having family traditions, temples and rituals, and ashrams and gurus is inadequate. Okay? And this is the gap that we Hindus face, and that is the reason, the rationale for the academic study of Hinduism, or what we call Hindu studies today. Why HUA? Why now? Well, Hindu civilization is a re-emerging civilization after 1,000 years of conquest and colonization. We've lost our language, Sanskrit. We've lost a lot of our knowledge systems, and along the way, we've lost our confidence about our own traditions and culture. There is an urgent need for recovery and restoration, for preservation, protection, and transmission. And the contribution of its intrinsic value, the value contained in the knowledge systems born of Hindu thought, to contribute it meaningfully to the world, for the well-being of the world, for society itself. These are the possibilities that we want to enable through Hindu University of America. And the orientation to Hindu Studies course is a critical ingredient is a starting point for this engagement. The value of Hindu studies is to enable us to become conscious, engaged, and resilient Hindus. You know, not just for Hindus who are born Hindus, but even for those who are interested in engaging with Hindu Dharma more fully, even though they might have been born in another tradition. Our consciousness of these traditions, these knowledge systems, gives us knowledge, strength, and courage, pride, sense of responsibility, and we start engaging with the world through education, service, advocacy, public square, media, youth, and so on. It gives us confidence and courage, and we become resilient when we are not easily silenced. We don't become confused. Somebody throws the word caste at us, we become immediately so confused. We don't know what to say. And of course, resilient means we have developed the ability to transmit this culture across the generations, to protect its traditions, and to give the new generations an equal measure of interest, curiosity, and even mastery in the knowledge contained in the Hindu traditions and culture. And all of this leads to clarity, expertise, confidence, contribution, meaning, and ultimately a joyful celebration of the possibility of human existence. So the Hindu orientation to Hindu studies course is a 1.5 credit hour course. It costs $300. It's part of a community education program. It started at a very high level, by the way. Lots of readings, papers between weeks. It's the start and end dates are April 25th to July 27th, 10 sessions, 90-minute class every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. The class will likely go for an additional 30 minutes. So we'll spend about 2 hours every week for 10 weeks, which is 20 hours of class instruction. You'll get an A through F via grading, lots of engagement between weeks, videos to watch. And the 10 sessions contain all of these. This is the content, okay, course structure and content. We'll start with paradigms and methods. We'll examine colonialism and its aftermath. We look at the building blocks of Hindu thought across all of its sampradayas and traditions, the infinite variety of Hinduism. We look at the core constructs and ideas. We look at the spiritual versus the historical. We alluded to in today's session, but we look at it very deeply. A deep immersion into the world of Sanskrit as a language, very important. Texts and traditions. Post-colonial Hindu studies. What does it mean to study Hinduism after colonialism, after being so thoroughly colonized for over 200 years? History and method, an examination, an immersion into Western thought, into European thought. Conflict and peace studies. How do we get along in a plural, multipolar world? And of course, lastly, we'll end with future directions and pathways. We'll give you approaches through the curriculum. And the opportunity is really to give a new voice in a new generation to the timeless voice of Vedic Hindu wisdom, to address the challenges that face our contemporary humanity. Okay. The challenges such as sustainability, pluralism, health, holistic health and emotional well-being, ethics in leadership, which is increasingly disappearing, education, families and communities, sustainability of communities and families, inequality, scarcity, poverty, and a sense of justice in the world, conflict, violence, terrorism, and peace. And ultimately, the liberal arts, social sciences, and the humanities itself, which I believe itself is going through a crisis today. The liberal arts, humanities, and social sciences are themselves in the modern Western universities in Europe and America, and their replicas in India and other parts of the world. They're themselves going through a crisis of relevance today. And all of this, will give us the ability to create a space for thoughtful engagement, intellectual engagement, thoughtful research and publication, to contribute to Hindu thought to humanity and its future, and ultimately to engage with with the world as a Hindu with clarity and confidence. Okay, so that is the webinar today. And I'd like to take some questions. Okay, there's a Q&A box, and some people are putting their information in the Q&A box. Please do ask questions. We'll take a few questions, but I would like to ask Ankur to put up the Orientation to Hindu Studies URL in the chat. Everybody, please pick up this URL and register for the upcoming course in the spring quarter. Okay, with that, I will stop and I'll take any questions, okay? Yeah, how many hours needed outside classroom? Well, at least 3 hours every week, 3 to 4 hours every week outside classroom. You'll get a very thoughtful, insightful article or two to read, a paper or two to read, okay? And you'll find yourself really drawn into these writings, into these readings, basically. And they will be deeply impactful for you. Yeah, Vanshika saying in the chat, she's saying she got selected for a top-notch multinational corporation, knowledge in Hindu studies. Okay, all right, great, Vanshika. We look forward to having you back in our programs sometimes. Okay, any other questions, anybody? Already registered. Okay, MacBook Pro. Please do share your name. Okay, I look forward to seeing you in the class. If you've already registered, fantastic. So Ankur has pasted the link in the chat. Please pick up that link. Pick up that link. Just click on it and it'll open up for you in one of your browsers, and you can look through the course and register as soon as you can, okay? Any other questions, anybody? No, there is no textbook needed, Poonamji, for this course. All the readings will be provided as part of the learning management system as part of the course. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, if there are no questions, we can conclude the webinar for today. Okay, chat is disabled. Why is chat disabled, Ankur? Ankur, help me here, please. Why is chat disabled?
No, that was from before.
Oh, that was from before. Okay. Okay. All right. Fantastic. So if there are no more questions, we will conclude the webinar. And Ankur, can you throw up the results from the survey?
Yes.
Okay. So there are at least 6 people who are saying, are you interested? Okay. Please do. People who have questions, who have doubts, please do get in touch with us. We'll be very happy to engage with you to the full measure of your satisfaction. And those of you who are saying definitely interested, please register immediately, okay? Please don't postpone. You'll forget about it in a few days. Just register, and I look forward to seeing you in the course. Thank you. Thank you all for joining today. Namaste, and see you soon. Namaste, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.